Welcome back to the ReTribalize podcast, where we talk about building the towns and the communities of the future. Today is a very important episode, discussing fraternal networks versus the state, how fraternal networks used to operate across history, and how their rebirth is so instrumental to building new social structures today. So let's get right into it, talking about the enemy and the problem that we have in the modern world. The enemy we face today, in general, is the vast centralization of power. And I think many people can agree with this. The military-industrial complex, in cahoots with the Fed and central banking, allied with big business and big government, this is bad in general. And this centralization has swelled to unimaginable levels since the founding of America. And as this centralization and corruption grows, men are more lonely, more atomized than ever. In fact, a lot of the religious gathering spaces, the towns, the communities, and specifically the fraternal networks that used to bond people together, these have fallen away. So it's every man alone against these vast impersonal institutions. And the simple fact of the matter is the men without a tribe are weak. In fact, if we go all the way back to ancient Greece, to Athens, one of the first things tyrants would do when they rose to power was try to disband strong brotherhoods and networks of men, the militias, the symposiums. And that's because men who are alone are more easily controlled and manipulated. In fact, the only thing that can really overthrow a vast centralization of power is men who gather together, who band together, right? So obviously, fraternal networks, things like the Freemasons, things like some of the other orders we're going to talk about, these have been steeped in conspiracy, in negativity. People are very skeptical of fraternal networks in general today. And perhaps there's good reason for that. But my argument today is that they actually need to be reborn at a higher octave. And I think this is essential for the future of, building tribes and building strong communities once more. So I'm going to talk a lot about fraternity here, but of course, this also applies to female societies and gathering spaces for women, probably under a similar but different ethos, so women can follow along here as well. So let's go straight into the golden age of fraternity. So in the late 1800s and early 1900s, it was estimated that 1 in 3 men were part of some kind of fraternal order. This is wild, 1 in 3 men. This was the flourishing of things like Freemasonry. The Independent Order of Oddfellows actually rivaled Freemasonry. There's all these different workers' unions, mutual aid societies, the Knights of Pythias. Go do some research. It's actually wild. And this is why, if we look at the towns across America, usually in the most prime real estate, there is some Freemasonic temple, right? These kinds of gathering spaces of men, this is where the business leaders, the community leaders, the political leaders, they would gather in these kinds of spaces, right? And these have often been painted as evil, as I was saying, the butt of many conspiracies. But you have to understand is that in the early 1900s, when these organizations were the biggest, the federal government was the smallest. In fact, these organizations, I want to argue, are the main opposition to the centralized power of government and the welfare state. And that's because the reason they're often painted as evil, my friends, and just really take a step back and think about this, is those in power benefit most from men not gathering. So with an open mind, let's go consider the fraternal networks of the past before we talk about building the next great fraternal networks, which I'm very passionate about. So what did fraternal networks offer to men? Primary and something overlooked today is mutual aid and social welfare functions. In fact, in the past, men would get their insurance, their life insurance, their health insurance from such networks, right? If they got sick or lost a job or died, their widow and children would probably be helped out from the brotherhood they were a part of. And this filled the social insurance gaps before the welfare state expanded. Furthermore, inside of these societies, right, something like Freemasonry, members would get a sense of brotherhood, ritual, identity, progression, and stability. If we look at Freemasonry, it had all these different degrees and ranks. And these degrees and ranks were essentially about different levels of spiritual and moral initiation, getting steeped in the spiritual wisdom of the world, having a clear moral hierarchy. Like Freemasonry itself is founded on some core pillars like brotherly love, charity, and the preservation of esoteric wisdom. And no, I'm not a member of Freemasonry, but if you go read someone like Manly P. Hall, he's been such a great teacher, wrote thousands and thousands of lectures, was very prolific in the 1900s, and he was a 33rd degree Freemason. In fact, a lot of the, spiritual, intellectual leaders across history have been part of these secret orders. Even if we go look at someone like Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, both Freemasons. If we go look at Isaac Newton was part of the Royal Society. In fact, most of the Enlightenment, most of the Renaissance was birthed from salons, from cafes, from symposiums of men gathering. So these weren't just some fringe organizations. These were these like institutions that gave men a clear path to higher spiritual advancement, moral advancement, and also social advancement, right? So, and that's kind of the third pillar here, is like these places were the gathering, the social centers for men. So you would go to your lodge, you'd go to your cafe, right? And they would have events, symposiums, banquets, scouting. Like so many men today are actually looking for what these lodges used to offer. A place to go train, with other men, a place to go discuss philosophy, history, science, the things that you were interested in, and also get access to this vast local and international network of business leaders, of political leaders, and people, especially the head of the lodge, could connect you to people that would really aid you in life. So if you're like graduating college and you don't really know what to do and you don't have many connections, you would join one of these societies and they would connect you into a node where you would, have access to a lot more resources than you would otherwise. Again, you would get your brotherhood, healthcare, business network, spiritual education through these organizations. Now, was there a dark side to these organizations? Perhaps. I actually think a lot of them have degenerated to some degree into more of like a charity and business social networking place versus this real commitment to moral and spiritual development that they used to offer. So a dark side, perhaps, but also tons of light sides. These kinds of salons, they birthed a lot of high culture and great men, as we talked about. So this is like what they used to do. And they were so, premier across the world. And they're kind of gone today, right? I have a deep skepticism of joining something like Freemasonry, although I'm so interested in Brotherhood. In fact, Brotherhood has been like my guiding ethos for so much of my life. Who doesn't want to feel like they have real, true friends, comrades going a similar direction with them, going together? Men bond shoulder to shoulder, and it's so hard to find men who have similar interests, similar spiritual, values and moral values, and actually want to go build something awesome with you, right? So this is why I've been slowly dedicating my life to rebuilding fraternal networks. Many years ago, I built a brotherhood in my local town. We would do like sauna, cold plunge meditation, discuss things, and these guys became my best friends. We'd hang out all the time, and it was amazing to have those kinds of connections in my real life. And it's been harder and harder to find those kinds of spaces as I've traveled throughout the world, as I lived in different communities. The sense of brotherhood really has vanished in today's world until recently, right? So in the past year or two, I started this thing called the Men's Academy, right? And it's dedicated to, having great discussions about philosophy, history, personal development. But it's been very interesting that this online community has been manifesting into the real world and absolutely changing my life. This is a picture of us here in Tulum. I'm traveling the world with a few members from the Men's Academy. We're building the ReTribalize, app, the ReTribalize channel. We're business partners, but we're also allies, right? We have this sense of a destiny that we want to build together. And furthermore, other people in the Men's Academy are linking up with each other other, meeting up. And where we want to go from here is having many houses or chapters in different places around the world where like-minded men who are filtered through the network can meet each other, create more of a sense of camaraderie, and actually start building towards dreams united. You see, again, men alone, men without a tribe, they're less fulfilled. I think so much of like self-actualization, so much of belonging, these kinds of things, it comes from having a brotherhood around you. So I want to discuss how we can rebuild fraternal orders and fraternal networks in the modern day and what I've found to be most useful. So let me grab a drink of water here. So we have a huge advantage today over these archaic forms of things like Freemasonry. Honestly, I think Freemasonry has a marketing model from the 1850s, and it's so many boomers, in silent generation in Freemasonry, but it's not very appealing to the young people. Like, it's just like this society that doesn't have a lot of vitality left in it. And I think we can revive these kinds of orders or build new ones that are even better, right? And this is what I'm seeing is one is online community with a mission. So if you join or build an online community, you can build it around certain values. Like the Men's Academy is built on the pursuit of noble culture, of higher culture, of brotherhood. And also we generally have great discussions on spirituality, philosophy, X, Y, and Z. So you can join or build one of these networks online. And the crazy part is if you have 50 members, 100 members, it kind of shakes out where you find people that you really resonate with. And this is amazing, as I've met most of my best friends through the internet, through my YouTube channels, right? We get on calls, they join this community, we build a relationship online and kind of vet each other. And if there's deep resonance there, I invite them out to meet me in my real life. Again, this is where I source most of my best friends, right? And so what you're looking for inside of one of these, online communities or fraternal networks is a co-founder, right? Someone that you really want to go the distance with. You invite them out to meet in real life. Maybe you meet for a week and kind of see like, is there friendship potential here? I think I could go way deeper into vetting people, finding a true friend, finding a tribe co-founder. But once you find one person, my friends, I have 2 people, traveling the world with me right now. Everything changes in your life, everything, because your conversations birth bigger ideas. You have the sense that you have wingmen going with you. And like it's absolutely life-changing. So filtering the world through these online networks, finding 1 or 2 people to basically create a co-living house with, right? This is very important. I think a lot of online networks, if they don't have like real world applications and meetups, they're lacking a lot of the sense of like foundation and concreteness that could be had. And what I want to do with the Men's Academy, right, is really inspire every member in there to find one person in their real life or from this community that they want to create a co-living house with. For instance, like buying a house or renting a house is so expensive that most young men, most people, they need roommates. Why not source your roommates from a highly filtered network, right? Find someone that you really want to co-live with. And by doing that, you slowly build this incredible high trust network online that has houses in the real world. And if you're going to rent a house, right? Rent a house with 3 bedrooms. Invite that one true friend or co-founder that you find, right? And then you have a 3rd room to start filtering people in for a week or a month at a time. And this is how we could expand houses from a fraternal network all over the world. And of course, these houses can have women involved too. It can be a tribe. You can have your girlfriend there, whatever it is. But the men are bonded in a bigger network with shared values and a shared mission. And from that network, you can source your business connections. You can have your deeper discussions on philosophy, spirituality, history. And also there's this shared strength when a network is high trust and bonded. So level 5 of kind of fraternal networks and where I see it going is if we have many houses and like men maturing with each other, creating small wolf packs, when bachelors move on to families, right? Maybe you start a homestead or you start a business. All of a sudden you can open up maybe one space on your land or have a co-living house next to you where you can invite the younger men to come bond with you as an apprentice on the farm or come learn from you in your business, right? And this is how fraternal networks used to operate, was this degree of mentorship and apprenticeship, right? So, and I think this would build this sense of like real community that's going in a certain direction. So this is what we're doing with the Men's Academy. And there's actually a link below if you want to talk to me about it one-on-one, is we are building this high trust, highly filtered network online. And I'm just really encouraging people to meet one person that they want to create proximity with. Proximity for you might look different than me. Like, you don't need to travel the world renting houses for months at a time. You could create a co-living house. You could, build an extra tiny home on your land. You could just invite someone to rent the place next to you, right? I think proximity with men that we feel bonded with is so important. In fact, even if I have best friends in a city, like around that city, if they're 10 or 15 minutes away from me, I'll see them once a week, right? But if they're next door to me, we'll have dinner more often, we'll hang out more often, we'll train together, we'll build a much deeper relationship that actually can birth these bigger dreams, these bigger projects that we need to bring into being. The ReTribalize channel, I mean, we're dedicated to building the communities of the future. And that looks like filtering the world to find your people who are tribe founders with you, a co-founding team. So there's a link below if you want to talk to me. Again, join us. We also have the app. And yeah, I think this is the rebirth of fraternal networks. Now, again, I believe in organic emergence. I think there's so many details we could hammer out in the architecture of how this all works. But let's just start doing it, right? Let's start building brotherhood, prioritizing it, building sisterhood, prioritizing it, and letting that be the foundation for bigger tribes and bigger projects. The moment that you meet your co-founders, my friends, the moment that you meet guys who really want to go with you, who share your values, this is where the great voyages are sparked from, the great ideas, the great inventions, the great businesses, and the great tribes of the future. Thanks for watching. Links below. Check out more of the ReTribalize podcast and leave us a 5-star review. Peace.